Something about the lights looked familiar, and Russell was hearing this off to the side of the house. And he heard the narrator say the lights were reported by a general aviation pilot who was landing. He said, "I'd never thought of it since then." And then he added, "That was me." Video? Anyone? Alejandro, I'm gonna need your help on this video. It's not going.
May be able to help me in this may be, who knows? Because this is an international story. Because of you both being here, I looked into the international files, not covered by our Ministry of Defense, but maybe covered by yours. This took place in Arizona. An unidentified pilot, according to the press cuttings, flying near an airport in Arizona with his son when he spotted 6 lights in the night sky. So he called from the airplane to air traffic control to say, "I'm seeing these lights here. I wasn't expecting any other planes. They're none supposed to be on my landing path. Can you tell me what's going on?" They said, "There are no other planes." He said, "I'm seeing 6 bright lights coming towards me." Mystery unresolved.
Except tail number for that plane was Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra, and I was the pilot.
No
way. Oliver and I.
Take this back. I didn't say that in the briefing.
Oliver and I.
Should have get to the end.
Oliver and I were flying, and I was flying him to go see his girlfriend. And we were on approach. And I saw 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in a V shape. And Oliver said to me, I was just looking at him and I was coming in, we're maybe a half a mile out. And Oliver said, "Pa, what are those lights?" And I then it kind of like came out of my reverie, and I said, "I don't know what they are." I said, he said, "Are we okay here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna call him." And I reported it. And they said, "We're not painting anything. We don't show anything." I said, "Well, okay, I'm gonna declare it's unidentified, it's flying, and it's 6 objects." We landed. I taxied, dropped him off, took off, went back to LA. Never said a word. He never said a word. I never thought of it. 2 years later, Goldie is watching a television show when I came home. And the show is on UFOs. But as I came home, "Hey, honey, how's it going?" And I'm kind of hearing the TV going, and I stopped and I started watching, and it was on that event. Now, that was the most viewed UFO event. Over 20,000 people saw that. And I'm watching this, and I'm feeling like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's like, why do I know this? You know what? And it's not clear to me. And finally, I said, then they said the pilot reported it. A general aviation pilot reported it on landing. I had never thought of it since then, and I said, "That was me. That was me." And I said, "Wait a minute, I'll go to my logbooks." So I went to my logbooks, and there was the flight at that time, and I didn't mention anything about the UFO. The fascinating part of that to me is that it just went literally out of my head. And Oliver never mentioned it. And had I not seen that show, I'd have never thought of it again. Now, that to me was the weird part.
Believe it now, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just unidentified. It's flying, and it's
an object.
It's an object. Yeah.
Right.
Moving towards you at this.
We need to move on.
So keep in mind that he said it literally went out of my head. That's going to be a continuing theme through this, and you might have heard a lot about this already.
May be able to help me in this may be, who knows? Because this is an international story. Because of you both being here, I looked into the international files, not covered by our Ministry of Defense, but maybe covered by yours. This took place in Arizona. An unidentified pilot, according to the press cuttings, flying near an airport in Arizona with his...
Okay. I think we're back to normal. Okay. Let me see what we've got here. All right, so there were thousands, literally thousands of 911 calls. Okay.
May be able to help me in this.
No, reported that night of March 13th, 1997. And regarding the strange lights and what seemed like a miles-wide craft that was seen in the skies over Arizona. Reports were coming in from the very northwestern part of the state, starting around 8:15 p.m. The reports were similar in that it was a very large craft spanning most of the sky, if you can imagine that. It was very low, perhaps a few thousand feet at most, very slow, almost leisurely. And all agreed that it was silent, just silent. And there were zero means of propulsion noted. Now, how many of our creations that we have out there make no noise, especially when they're going very fast? All of our technologies make a lot of noise, yet this was perfectly silent.
Oh my God, how big is this thing? It just seemed to cover the whole entire neighborhood.
We were just wondering, have you heard anything about these lights that are flickering up here?
Highway Patrol, what's your emergency? You said there's lights in the sky? Yeah, there's a full lot. It's moving real slow.
It went out straight over towards the airport, right to the right side of Squaw Peak.
Right.
I've got that object inside also.
Are you serious?
It's huge.
Ever?
I had a beat on them from the tower. They got to be going away because they were closer than this. Now I'm looking at them. Oh my gosh!
My name is Tim Lee. This is my wife, Bobby, and my son, Hal. Back in March 13th of 1997, we were witnesses to seeing a UFO, an actual craft, fly directly over a house in the direction of Prescott. 5 distinct lights. As it got closer and closer and the lights were further and further apart, I began to think, well, maybe this is, some kind of object, and that it had to be pretty big. I'm looking at the outer edge of this wing, and I could see way down the block. I couldn't actually see the tail. I saw the third light, dark, almost the same color as the sky, but you could see the stars, and then you couldn't see the stars. Very absolute sharp edge went by, and as it did, the stars unfolded out.
These were circular light wells that we could not even estimate really how deep they were. The lights looked like they were at least 15 feet, wide. And I don't know how deep, because all we could see was the white light inside the well. It just seemed like a very thin craft. You could fit 10 stealths on one arm.
And I suspect that unless the Defense Department proves us otherwise, that it was probably some form of an alien spacecraft. And I think as a public figure, you have to be very careful about what you say, because people can have pretty emotional reactions. The lights were really brilliant, and it was just fascinating. It was enormous. It just felt otherworldly. You're in your gut, you could just tell it was otherworldly.
I looked up at the sky and observed this huge arrow-shaped, triangular-shaped object just floating in the sky right in the open field right over here. And as I stopped right up the road here to get out and see if I could get a picture or observe it better, the object, with unexplainably in the naked eye, was just from gradually moving to all the way down in the field, like within a snap of a finger or a wink of the eye. sound. I had my window down. The radio was off, and there was no sounds, nothing coming from the flying object.
This object was above me about 500 feet, and it was huge.
Okay, so this trailer you just watched is part of an exhibit that we have on the Massive Arizona UFO Flyover that Phoenix MUFON created in conjunction with the Arizona Historical Society Museum located in Tempe. If you have a few minutes while you're here in town, you can bop on over to the museum. It's only about 3 or 4 miles away, and you can view the whole exhibit up there. It really turned out nice, and it gives everyone a really good idea of what happened there. We've got the timeline across the whole wall, and you can see what happened, when, and where. So the 911 phone lines, in addition to the police station and radio stations across the state, they were flooded with calls from witnesses, as I had mentioned earlier. At 8:15 p.m., a report came in from Paulden, Arizona, the first one, from a retired police officer that he had, hang on a minute, seen 5 reddish colored lights heading south in the shape of a boomerang. At 8:18, the series of lights were headed through Wickenburg, and the equidistant string of lights flew right over Luke Air Force Base and into Phoenix, then on into Tempe and Scottsdale. Traffic stopped dead on the streets as witnesses saw the lights overhead. Little League ball games were stopped in mid-play while coaches, moms, dads, and players stared at the sky in disbelief. Many of the witnesses stated that the craft was so big it blotted out the stars behind it. Now, wouldn't you love to see something like that? If you're staring up at the sky and you're looking at the stars, how pretty they are tonight, and all of a sudden this black thing comes and just blots them out. I think that would be the craziest, best thing to see ever. Trig Johnston, a retired commercial airline pilot, was outside with his son looking for the Hale-Bopp comet, like many others, when he saw the large boomerang-shaped craft. Now, here is a professional commercial pilot who knows the size of aircraft, and he said it had to be the size of 25 airliners. At 8:30 p.m., several air traffic controllers also saw the large craft, and they stated it had a perfectly smooth alignment as it cruised by them. And their estimate was that it was only 500 to 1,000 feet off the ground. They reported seeing nothing on radar, and the 6 lights stayed right in place, no drifting downward like flares. And there were no blinking red and green lights seen on this craft at all, as there always are on conventional aircraft. Some of the witnesses of the March 13th event stated they could see through the large craft as it flew over Phoenix, and that it had a very translucent appearance. Others stated that it had detail on the bottom of the craft. So there were definitely varying accounts of what people were seeing. Travelers heading south on I-17 saw a massive array of lights and stated it was like looking through water. Others stated that it indeed looked like a distortion field or a ripple effect, and then returned around the large craft. And there were even some reports that lights had detached from the craft. It looked like the main giant craft had something coming off of it, like lights detaching, and then coming back and redocking. Cement truck driver Bob Greiner was cruising south on I-17. He was within 1 mile of Luke Air Force Base, and he witnessed 3 jets being scrambled with their afterburners on to intercept the string of lights. Luke Air Force Base, of course, denied any jets being scrambled. Witnesses were told the Air Force does not handle UFOs and to check in with the National UFO Reporting Center. The next day, a Luke Air Force Base public info officer released an official statement saying they knew nothing about the sightings and they had no radar reports or airplanes in the sky that night, and that no jets had been launched after 7 p.m. 4 months later, however, the Arizona Air National Guard admitted they had sent jets into the sky that night from Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson to conduct training exercises involving flares. Their jets dropped flares over the Berry Goldwater Range, which is a test range approximately 50 miles southwest of Phoenix here. And the Air National Guard stated, what people witnessed were our flares being dropped, not an alien craft. And they had been dropping flares a whole week before this event on March 13th, before the event. So how come there were no witness calls from those flares then? We don't know. Let's look at flares for just a minute. There are two types of flares. Illumination flares that are also called magnesium flares. They light up a wide area. They are attached to a parachute. They emit a very white light while they're burning. They really look like they are burning. And they have an approximate 1 minute burn, and they emit lots of white, very noticeable smoke. Then there are decoy flares, which are exactly what the name implies. These flares trick infrared guided missiles that will then attack the light instead of the craft that dropped them. That's not me. It really isn't where that's coming from. These decoy flares burn for 5 seconds. All of the witnesses questioned back in 1997 state they saw no smoke, no burning. None of the lights seem to be sagging below the others, like you would expect a line of flares to do. Flares burn out. These lights remain constant and equidistant from each other. What we can piece together is that at approximately 8:30 p.m., there was a very large craft of unknown origin that followed a path through the state, made itself very known above a major metropolitan city, and then continued along its way and was seen by tens of thousands of eyewitnesses. Then at approximately 10:30, the Air National Guard came in and dropped flares from A-10 Warthogs, part of Operation Snowbird, which were stationary lighted flares, and this became their documented story of a military exercise to counteract the 8:30 p.m. witness testimony. They were trying the nothing to see here, folks, ploy. Luckily, we are way wiser than that. And perhaps they thought that if they told us of a military exercise taking place, that we would forget we do know how to tell time, and that there was a known difference between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. Very few other events have rocked government officials like this massive flyover did. According to two credible researchers, the government went to DEFCON 3 the night of the massive Arizona UFO flyover. These events are so well documented in Dr. Lynn Kitai's book entitled The Phoenix Lights, and her publication is considered the most comprehensive report of the event. The flyover was also well documented in James Fox's documentary, I Know What I Saw. Our Arizona governor at the time, Fife Symington, made a complete mockery of the event and any investigation that should have happened. His mockery of the event was a direct insult to the tens of thousands of eyewitnesses. Thank you. One such eyewitness stated, "I wish the government would just admit it. You know what it's like in this city right now? It's like having 50,000 people in a stadium watch a football game and then having someone tell us we weren't there." Years later, ex-Governor Fife Symington said he actually did witness the event and described it as otherworldly. Good try, Fife. Over the years of my involvement with Arizona MUFON, we have gathered reports from witnesses of this event that felt at the time they were just numb and not supposed to talk about it, and so they didn't. After years went by, they felt that it might be time to disclose what they had witnessed, and they wrote into MUFON to report their sightings. We still receive perhaps 4 or 5 sighting reports a year from those 1997 witnesses. So what is this numbing sensation that is affecting certain witnesses? Is it a sort of telepathic message to just keep quiet? You would think that anything this life-altering would really make you want to talk about it, to see if others saw anything similar, to compare notes with someone, but this was not the case. People kept quiet. I spoke to a witness of a similar sighting in Washington state back in the late 80s, where a very large craft flew over the freeway with traffic below. It flew into the thick foliage on the side of the road, and the area was absolutely lit up from the craft in the trees. Motorists pulled over to the side of the freeway, lined up along the white line on the shoulder of the road, stared speechlessly into the forest, and no one took a step forward over that line to see what was going on. There was no hysteria, no shouting, nothing. After a few minutes, they all got back in their vehicles and drove away. No words were shared, nothing appeared in the newspapers. It was as if it had never happened. So what is this numbing sensation that sometimes overtakes witnesses of a UFO event? There were a few witnesses of the massive Arizona UFO flyover that felt like they were getting a telepathic message of sorts. The message was, don't worry, you're safe, just watch. One of the very interesting points about this event is that no one was harmed at all. We have not heard of anyone who had a traumatic experience over this. It seemed to bring a sense of peace, of pure wonder, and there has been no emotional distress reported whatsoever. So what do we think this event is telling us? Was this a show of superior strength and technology from an alien species? Was it a government black project that was test flown above this major metropolitan city to gauge our reaction? Because it came from the corner of Nevada where Area 51 is located. Was it something that simply got loose from our military there? And did we have the technology back in '97 to fly something that low, that slow, and with zero sound? If the military was testing something and it was top secret, why fly it over the heart of a major metropolitan city like Phoenix for all to see? That just doesn't make any sense to me. Another very interesting part of this event that was not too well known is what was happening north of us on the Navajo Nation lands the night before March 13th. These accounts are given by John Dover, retired Navajo Ranger, who is an excellent investigator and friend, and who will be holding a workshop here on Sunday afternoon to enlighten you to an amazing bunch of high strangeness happening up on the lands. On March 12th, 1997, John was at home with his family, kids, and wife in northern Arizona in the town of Loop. His brother-in-law comes over to his house and states, "Hey, something just flew over the house and you got to come out and see this." So the family goes outside on the driveway and they sit there and they saw a string of lights.
Hello. There we go.
Hello, hello. Okay, so again, we're in the town of Loop. It is east of Flagstaff, north of here. Okay, so John and his family are seeing these lights that are traveling counterclockwise on the horizon, maybe 10 miles out. The lights are traveling slowly with zero sound. John noticed that as he watched the lights, they would change color. The first one was orange, but would change to another color, green or red or blue, very slowly. Then the second light would start changing. Then the third one, like follow the leader. When the color change got to the end of the line of lights, it would start over again with the leading light. It looked like a slow motion string of Christmas lights, he said. Then the lights started getting brighter and brighter, and then they would dim, following the same sequence as the color change. When I questioned John on this, he said they were definitely not looking or acting like flares. And mind you, there were no drones at the time. They just did not exist yet. The lights were just circling the whole valley and the whole town of Loop. But where everyone could see them, they were putting on a great show. John later spoke to the people in the neighboring towns and found out that this was seen up to 45 miles away, all through the Navajo Nation lands, which is a very wide area spread out like a spoke. John called the UFO reporting center located in Las Vegas at the time. He was asked if he had any photographs or it wouldn't amount to much. So a lot of times if you don't have that corroborating evidence, they don't want anything to do with you. John noticed that the answering party sounded like he had been absolutely bothered by the phone call. John's next call was to the Coconino County Sheriff's Department. Being a law enforcement officer, John had the direct number to dispatch without going through 911. He asked if there were any deputies on the north side of Flagstaff that can verify something for him. The dispatcher responded, "No, there is nobody to talk with right now that can verify this sighting." Now remember that at this time, 1997, to be seeing a UFO of any sort, you were considered a little bit of a nutcase and you were ripe for lots of ridicule and eye rolling. Well, John grabbed his 8mm video camera and the tripod and he set it up in his driveway. In the community on his street, people were turning out their lights on the houses, bringing out lawn chairs in the front yards, the coolers. Again, this was a great show out there to see. It looked like a big Super Bowl party on the street, he said. There were no street lights anyway, so it was nice and dark for viewing of the skies. The whole town was watching the spectacle for about 30 minutes. The lights were going in a big circle around loop in counterclockwise direction, always on the horizon. Still with zero sound, they peeled off single file and flew to the west toward the Grand Canyon. John grabbed binoculars and saw them fly out over the canyon until they were out of sight, still with the colors changing and still going slow that entire time. The whole street full of neighbors was just standing there dumbfounded and not knowing what to make of what just happened. No one spoke. They just went back inside their homes. John did consider this behavior very weird, but still no one ever spoke about it ever. So John thinks it was due to just some shock value going on that night. There is a cultural component in the Navajo nations, that of star people coming to the Navajo lands. It is considered part of their belief system and is completely everyday, ordinary to them. To the Navajo, this is a normal occurrence. They don't understand why we get so worked up over seeing UAPs. While John was working with the Navajo Rangers and they were expected to investigate reports of UAPs on the lands in conjunction with MUFON, he often asked the members of the community, "Why don't you report these sightings?" He always received a reply that they will not report it in and make it well known, because then a whole bunch of people would show up looking around and the UAPs will not return. The people on the Navajo lands want them to come back, want these visitations to continue. These are gods to the Navajo from prehistory, and they do something to draw more attention than is needed, then the gods are not going to return and people won't receive their blessings. Blessings are the concept called hosho, and it means to be in balance. It acknowledges that there is evil and good in the world, and it accepts that, but your life must be in balance between the two. Destroying evil completely does not fit the Navajo culture, as there needs to be a balance. John said that his sighting appeared to be lights that were separate, not attached to a structure or each other, but still maintains the slight possibility that they could have been one large craft circling that valley. John states there were no telepathic messages received from anyone in his community. And one of the unusual things that John learned from his brother-in-law, who first told them to come outside and see this, was his later description of the craft that he saw coming over the house before all the lights started circling. He saw a triangular shaped craft. John's take on the massive Arizona UFO flyover is that it was a UFO possibly checking us out and maybe announcing themselves, saying, "We are here." Perhaps just to gauge our reaction again. Peter Davenport from New Fork mentioned he had an airman friend at Luke Air Force Base, and that indeed jets had been scrambled and the base would be locked down very soon. The pilots said the craft emitted a blue beam of light in front of their jets, and pilots understood this as a warning shot and to stand down, which they immediately did. There was also testimony that one of the pilots was so shook up from his encounter when he exited his jet, he had to be helped across the tarmac. He was having such emotional distress. So many witnesses stated so many different sizes of the one large V-shaped craft. So a group of mathematicians got together and worked out the angles that witnesses were showing with their arms. And the numbers stated this craft was not a mile wide. It was more like 10 miles wide. Back in 1997, did we have the technology to build something that big that could fly that low, that slow, and again, with zero sound? What we have here is a very good conversation starter. As you sit around the courtyard tonight, around the fires, around the pool, you guys can discuss this and come up with your own conclusions. There are a couple of other events that are very similar sounding. One is the Stephenville, Texas sighting. And on January 8th of 2008, there were dozens of witnesses in Stephenville, Texas that spotted an object in the early evening sky there. A pilot and police officer also witnessed the lights. They hovered, they streaked off very quickly into the night sky. It was approximately 3,000 feet in the air and was as long as a half mile. It had very bright lights. Military officials stated that witnesses might be seeing an optical illusion of sunlight reflected from two passing airliners. The military later explained that they, of course, had an F-16 training exercise in the area, and that must have been what people were seeing. This case was investigated by Texas MUFON, and radar reports confirmed something was in the air at that time and place. Still, one more case that is similar is the Hudson Valley UFOs. where hundreds of witnesses saw a massive silent boomerang shape hovering above Brewster, New York. They estimated the size at 2 to 3 football fields long, and it was also very low. Witnesses exhibited no fear and also had that sense of numbness where no action feels necessary at all. The Hudson Valley UFOs have reappeared in 1995 there as well. So you can see the similarities of these events that are happening in select locations. So many questions remain, such as why the numbing of the witness? Why do these craft want to be seen? Are they benevolent? How do they cruise that slow? Are they ours and the government is just messing with us? Could this be a mass hallucination? And that's another thing you can discuss around the courtyard tonight, mass hallucinations. That's a good one. So now that we've imploded your brain with all these great thoughts for tonight, I want to thank you for your time and interest in this material. And if we have any questions, we can take questions now. Alejandro, is there someone that's going to run the microphone around if there are questions? Mike, Danny. If you have questions about this event, or if you have questions about MUFON in general, I can answer those for you. We'll start a line.
Thanks, Stacey. What's Spike Symington's latest take back and mea culpa on this whole thing?
I haven't heard any news on his findings since James Fox interviewed him for his film, I Know What I Saw. So as far as I know, he's still seen the otherworldly event, and I haven't heard any word about it since then.
So he's not working with you to try to get to the bottom of this?
He is not. Can you believe that? Yeah. Thank you.
So for people who want to suggest this could be Project Bluebeam, some kind of program to project a hologram along with some kind of mind control technology, for lack of a simpler phrase, is there any conversation about that and the technology that would be possible to mimic a giant UFO, giving people thoughts in their heads?
That's an excellent question. I just don't have the answer to that. There might be some technology out there. I'm not privy to it right now. I'm not sure if we had that complete hologram technology back in '97. I just don't know about that. There's so many possibilities that could have been happening here. So I know the people that I've talked to that I consider kind of experts in the field have said that wasn't ours.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Camille.
You said the guy set up his camera on a tripod and all. We didn't see that, but is that footage available?
I do not have that footage. John was over there a few minutes ago. There he is back there. So John told me that he did have this footage on a tape, and he had some very professional looking guys come to his house one day and said they weren't really with MUFON, right, John? They were just with they were with MUFON? No, they were just with a UFO reporting agency of some sort. And they asked to see his footage, which he, being the nice guy that he is, gave to them, never got it back, never saw anything from them again, and the footage has been lost. So yeah, not MUFON.
Has there been any sightings in the southern part of Arizona or northern Mexico of the similar craft?
We've had a few sightings. I'm going to say there's probably 5 or 6 similar sightings that have happened since the 1997 event. They don't happen for very long. It wasn't something that really flew across the whole city like this one large craft supposedly did. I myself had a sighting 2008 that was just on the east side of the Phoenix Valley. So, and it's been in the news. The newscasters will report about it, but I don't think there's anything conclusive that has come of it. There's just been the sightings of like the diagonal lights, maybe 5 or 6 on a diagonal plane that people have seen that seem to hover there. There were some that were flares on a couple of times a week. You can look right down there toward the Berry Goldwater Range if you're up on a little bit of elevation in Phoenix, and you can see the flares being dropped down there, and it's really kind of cool. We've got some really good footage of those flares so people can understand what the difference is between flares and not flares. But yeah, we do have some sightings of some stuff still going on here in Phoenix and around the area. I have no explanation for it. It's just kind of cool, and we always love to have it happen.
I was lucky enough to see the Phoenix lights.
Yay.
I was south of
Yeah.
Casa Grande, and 3 generations in my car and 2 other people got to witness this, but I was wondering, did we ever find out what happened to the pilots that were relocated after this?
No, I don't have any data on that at all. I wish we did. That would be someone great to have up here on the stage, huh?
I would
Yeah.
love to talk to them.
Yeah, me too.
I'll look for you afterwards.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions? Okay, well, you guys get to break for an early lunch then. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. So sorry for the technical stuff. We've got it worked out. We've tested. Of course, as soon as you go live, things stop working. Luckily, we have